Welcome to Lesson 5. Today, we're diving straight into the ultimate global sourcing playbook. In this explainer, we're going to unpack the exact strategies the world's biggest companies use to buy what they need to thrive across international borders. Look, if you want to understand how the modern global economy actually functions, you absolutely have to understand this playbook. Let's get into it. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start by establishing the baseline of global sourcing, then tackle the classic make-or-buy dilemma, explore why companies actually go offshore, navigate those hidden challenges, and finally, calculate the true bottom-line costs. All right, let's kick things off with our baseline. At its core, global sourcing isn't just, hopping on a call and buying some parts from overseas. It's a highly strategic maneuver. We're talking about ruthlessly optimizing your costs, supercharging your product quality, and saving time by leveraging a worldwide network. It's all about finding the absolute best source for a need, completely regardless of geography. Now, I really want you to notice the difference here because people confuse these two terms constantly. International procurement. That might just be a single cross-border transaction, like, say, a factory in Vietnam buying some German machinery just because the quality is superior without really hunting for a cheaper global alternative. Global sourcing, however, is an entire strategic architecture. You are actively integrating your business into the global supply chain to systematically drive down costs and boost efficiency everywhere. So that brings us to the central dilemma of this entire process, the make or buy decision. Before a company even thinks about looking overseas, they have to ask themselves the ultimate question. Do we make this thing ourselves or do we buy it? And wow, it is never just about the price tag. It's like this giant, complex puzzle balancing your internal capabilities, your long-term strategy, market forces, the headache of monitoring suppliers, and of course, the ever-present threat of uncertainty. It's a delicate balancing act that literally defines the shape of a modern corporation. To make this super concrete, let's look at Zara and Tesla. Notice how fiercely Zara guards its rapid, high-fashion designs? Or how Tesla protects its core battery tech by keeping it strictly in-house? They do that for total quality control and to protect their intellectual property. But simultaneously, Zara will happily outsource its mass clothing production, and Tesla outsources its car upholstery. Why? For incredible cost savings. They keep the secret sauce close to the chest, and they buy the rest. But hey, that balance isn't permanent. If your supplier knows more than you do, that classic information asymmetry problem, you are at a massive disadvantage. Hidden costs can just pop up out of nowhere. And if a massive disruption hits, you might have to scrap that buy decision entirely. Remember the pandemic? Automakers were completely paralyzed, scrambling for microchips. It forced giants like Ford to seriously consider pivoting to in-house chip production just to keep the lights on. Okay, moving on. Let's look at the actual catalysts for buying offshore. Once you've decided, okay, we're going to buy, why look across the globe? Well, businesses are driven offshore by a whole mix of intense motives. Yes, it starts with deep bottom-line cost benefits, but it's also about extreme manufacturing flexibility, like instantly getting more capacity when a local supplier drops the ball. It's about hunting down advanced tech. Sometimes it's a strategic play to penetrate a new market by building local goodwill. And sometimes it's just pure logic. The raw materials you absolutely need simply aren't in your backyard. Just imagine the sheer scale of this in the real world. We're talking massive, game-changing shifts. Think about relocating entire UK call centers to India, or moving massive garment production lines to Sri Lanka to capture vast cost efficiencies. On the tech side, we see countries tapping into entirely foreign markets to buy highly advanced infrastructure, like offshore wind farms. These motives directly drive where the world's capital and labor flow. But of course, it's time for a bit of a reality check when it comes to offshore challenges. Here's where the hidden dangers really start to creep in. You've analyzed the motives, you've negotiated this phenomenal low unit price overseas, but you've got to ask yourself, what exactly happens to your operations when the global supply chain inevitably fractures? Because trust me, it's not an if, it is absolutely a when. I like to think of global sourcing as a massive iceberg. That sweet unit price you negotiated, literally just the tip visible on the surface. Lurking right below the water, you have to navigate profound cultural and language barriers, brutal logistical headaches, and wild currency swings. Not to mention strict compliance laws, the constant threat of IP theft, and sudden political instability, like what we've seen in Ukraine, Libya, or Myanmar, which can freeze your supply chain overnight. So, how do you survive the iceberg? You have to execute precise proactive steps. Take currency fluctuations, for instance. To protect your margins from wild exchange rate swings, you might buy the offshore currency at the spot price right on the day of purchase, or you negotiate specific currency adjustment clauses into your contracts. Alternatively, you use financial hedging like futures or options, which is exactly the strategy a behemoth like Coca-Cola uses to bulletproof their finances.
And beyond the money, you've got to protect your operations. You might bring in cultural intermediaries and translators. Think of firms like Bain to stop communication breakdowns. You absolutely need crystal clear shipping terms, or Incoterms, and reliable logistics partners like DHL. You need the strict compliance and due diligence of a Unilever to avoid legal disasters. And ultimately, you need to build deep, long-term supplier relationships based on mutual respect, much like Toyota does, so your operations don't grind to a halt when things get tough.
Which brings us right to the finish line for Lesson 5, Calculating the True Total Cost. This is where the whole picture flips. When you actually map out the true total cost, comparing offshore sourcing side by side with domestic, those hidden expenses just absolutely glare at you. You're suddenly paying for complex international documentation, forward contracts, insane international bank fees for letters of credit, and way, way higher holding costs because your inventory is sitting on a boat for 6 weeks. Add all that up, and that cheap offshore unit price, yeah, it looks a whole lot different. So, as you take today's explainer and build out your own global sourcing playbook, I want to leave you with this final crucial question. Are the hidden costs of your offshore supply chain quietly eating away at the exact profits you set out to save? Global sourcing is an incredibly powerful tool, but only if you map the entire iceberg. Thanks for joining me for Lesson 5. Keep optimizing your operations, and we'll see you next time.